So I analyzed the situation with the officer that probably will be going to prison and Brooks, who is now dead at Wendy's. So here's the situation. First of all, the police officer walked over to Brooks' car, which is on private property of Wendy's. He knocked on the window a couple of times until the officer opened the door. Now, you can maybe argue in a certain sense that the officer was breaking and entering into his private property, which is his car, because, well, he was simply asleep. Here's the situation on why Brooks is dead. Brooks is dead because people had to drive around his car to get their Wendy's hamburger in Atlanta. They had to drive around his car. That was the problem. The officer chose to open the door to his car because he was blocking traffic. That wasn't necessarily traffic. That was a public business that was going on, okay? So we got to look at it very seriously. This officer extremely wanted to arrest this man. When he goes back to the car, he says, I don't want to deal with this guy. You can hear him on the tape. Those are the type of people that do not need to be a police officer. Okay, the officer that will be going to prison, or at least he's in trouble. He's fired. He's no longer a police officer. They already fired him. Chose to follow the legality procedures rather than to follow love. Okay, so this is a way to look at how are we going to, as if you're a police officer, if you chose to be that crazy in the world and want to go out there and just arrest people and just, how are you going to approach a situation with love rather than with just legality? Blow on this for me. Touch your nose. Do this and all this stuff. So we know the guy probably had something to drink. Okay, so that's all going to lead to killing, right? The guy was drinking, so let's kill him. That's wrong. Okay, the guy was drinking. I'm going to go, what about the officer said this? What about the officer did this? This officer should have got a reward if he did this. I'm going to go into Wendy's. I'm going to buy you a hamburger. We're going to sit here and talk for about 10 or 15 minutes, or even 30 minutes, or even 3 hours, or even 3 days. Okay? Then the guy would be alive. Boy, that would really take a lot of money out of that officer. And now that officer doesn't have a job and probably is going to prison because he used deadly force when he didn't need to. So that officer probably will be in prison. Think of this. The officer followed all the procedures. He did everything right. He gave him a test. He failed the test. He did everything right. And guess what? The police officer probably is going to jail for doing everything right because it's one-way thinking. So he could have gone into the Wendy's, got him a hamburger, got him some French fries. We want you to eat this. We want you to sober up. We want to walk you over to your sister's house, knock on the door, and make sure you're safe. And I'm going to leave my lethal weapon in my car, and I'm going to leave my stun gun in my car, and I'm going to turn into what's called a peace officer for a moment. Let me give you an example of what happened to me. I haven't seen my kids in about a year. The officer said, no, I'm not going to walk you over to your mother-in-law and talk to your wife, because I know if I would have been able to talk to her that night, I would be with my children right now. I would have had Thanksgiving. I would have seen their birthday. I would have had Christmas and all this stuff. But the officer chose to follow all the procedures, everything to legality, right on the side of the devil. Because there's no one in this world that's more legal than the devil. The devil lives by legality. Jesus Christ lives by love. Okay? So we know that. We know legality is wrong. We knew that from John Bunyan. The way of legality is the easy path. The way to Jesus Christ is the hard path. Because that would have been hard for that officer to walk over and to see me, see my family, be reunited with my family, right? I think that officer that did that to me that night should no longer be an officer. He's the type of officer that needs to be off the street. Warning. And I gave his badge number in my play, by the way. He's the type of officer that needs to be not representing a peace officer. He's representing the wrong way of thinking. Okay? We want family to be together. We want family and love to be together. Now, Brooks doesn't get to see his family, okay? Because they followed all the right procedures, everything to the Q. That's what's wrong with all the police officers today. That's the reason why most of them should no longer have lethal weapons, and none of them should be allowed to do chokeholds, okay? So we're learning. Let's improv. So-and-so, back up, go in there and buy so-and-so a hamburger and french fries and a drink, and we're going to talk to him for a while, and we're going to we're going to make friends with him. Okay, let's have officers that can make friends with people, and we're going to walk him over to his sister's house and drop him off. That's the right decision. That's de-escalation. That's the way of peace and love and happiness, and the way our country needs to be a good country again. I say make our country good again. Don't necessarily make it great again. Let's get rid of pride, but let's make our country good again. Let's have good people out there doing good things, right? Then he could get a reward, and that officer doesn't have to see prison time. I hope that officer does see prison time because he chose to follow the path of lethal force rather than follow the path of love and being merciful to somebody. So that's what I want to say. There's a lot of officers out there that are following all the legal procedures and making sure that person goes right to jail. And boy, they did a good job and met their quota. And there's plenty of them all lined up, ready to go right to prison. I think there's 12 of them that are going to prison this year. So we know for a fact that there are police officers out there that are out there today that do not need to be police officers. And we know for a fact that we need to work on de-escalation. We need a database to complain against officers that are using aggression upon people and not being merciful. And we need more officers that have probably the power of like a mall cop, like maybe have their stun gun and no chokeholds and no lethal force anymore. Or we can, well, there's other things that we can do as citizens, because we have the right to protect ourselves. Hopefully there will be change, because we need change really bad right now, because we're in bad shape right now, because people are too aggressive. And I would say follow the path of love rather than follow the path of just legality and strict procedure. Let's try to be merciful. Let's take a knee. You know, I'm amazed that this guy actually did this, you know. Oh, I'm feared for my life. I'm not going to be able to go home and see my kids. Boom! Now he's going to be behind bars.